Tonight we will have Tihomir as a main speaker together with the two ladies from United Kingdom. And shortly I will actually hand it over to him so he can introduce all of them. I just want to say that Tihomir was a director of Rome for the last 20 years, and he was a pastor, he was a broadcaster on the radio and whatnot through his life in I don't know how many continents and all of this. But I think that's almost enough for the beginning. So Tihomir, why won't you take it over from there? Introduce yourself and others and your topic for tonight.
All right, Bojan, thank you. Thank you very much. This is, at least for some of us, very interesting topic. So it's very easy to kind of go and speak on and on and on. And that's what I don't want to do this morning, because we also want to have your input too. As you know, the theme that we have given for today is losing Jesus in the conspiracy jungle. I'm especially honored that we are here. We have also with us two roommates, Julia Bicknell and Heather with us. They are both people that I really respect very much. They've been part of our Rome community for many years. Heather is a seasoned politician, and Julia is a seasoned journalist with a BBC experience and background. So I believe it would be a good thing also to hear them. The way we will be going through this is I'm going to give some kind of introduction, hopefully not for more than 10 minutes. And then we want to hear also for a few minutes, I want to hear Julia and Heather on the first part, which is the general part, going into this business of conspiracy theories. And then we are going to have a second part where we really want to focus on more on the spiritual side. And we will be interacting, three of us, also as we go through the second part. And then we are also planning to have some time for questions and discussion. And then we three will have like the final word. Why this topic today? I don't know about you, but I have over 3,000 friends on Facebook. And these are the people, these are my friends. You know, you can't have really 3,000 friends in a real sense, but they are the people, many of them I do know, many of them I superficially know, many are there because other friends I trust, and I have included them too. And what really astounded me and to a certain level shocked me was when this pandemic started, was how it surfaced to the surface, really. It surfaced how actually many people, I'm not talking about general people, I'm not talking about people I don't know, how many people, and not only here in America, to be clear about this, but globally speaking, people who are my friends on Facebook are into what I would like to call conspiracy theories. And from my perspective, into some very shocking conspiracy theories, believing them to be the absolute truth. You know, the other day, one of my friends from Australia, he asked me a question, if vaccine comes, are you going to be vaccinated? Assuming that if I say yes, that I'm going to commit a terrible sin. You know, I also have friends who are not into conspiracies, but they are literally confused. And they are sending me questions privately. What do you think about this? What do you think about this? What do you think about this? And literally they are confused because they're receiving every day from a number of places all kinds of links leading to all kinds of conspiracies. I receive every day, and I'm not going to exaggerate, there are days when I receive 10 messages at least privately with the links to this and this YouTube. And what's the really funny thing is that sometimes it's the same video that's just being spread from one to another, and everyone is thinking that he or she is the first one sending it to me. You know, and first of all, I don't have time to watch all of this. The second thing is I did watch some of them, and some of them are quite shocking in where they lead to. You know, I'm going to try in a minute to try to give some definition about what I mean when I'm saying conspiracy theories. But there are some that are really very popular at this time. And I would like to kind of mention them. One of them is that this whole thing about pandemics is a hoax. just staged deliberately to bring us like shiplings, ships into kind of submission, so that we would then all accept vaccines, be vaccinated, and lo and behold, there is a chip in vaccines. And this leads, for many people who are very much Christian, to mark of the beast. So do not take this. If you are going to be vaccinated, you are going to be marked according to the book of Revelation. I do want to also emphasize this, that most of the friends on Facebook that are spreading conspiracy theories are Christians. When I'm saying this, I have to put a disclaimer and say, I do not mean to say by this that Christians are spreading conspiracy theories, that this is the mark of Christianity. I'm saying that there is segment of Christianity or Christians that are very much into it. And maybe I try to explain why I believe that this is so. But most of those who are spreading are Christians from America, from Croatia, from Serbia, from Australia, from many other places, spreading practically almost the same conspiracies. And there are many, but especially now, it's about vaccines. Don't be vaccinated. This is all devilish thing. It's about one, which I call it cult. One thing which is called, if I'll pronounce it properly, QAnon. You can see it when people are demonstrating in USA, that people are holding sign Q. That doesn't mean a question time. It means that they're standing, believing in a Q theory, which in a simple form says this, that basically this is the time of judgment for all of those evil, hidden powers, Illuminatis, and all the evil men from Bill Gates, Obama, Hillary, Doctor, what's his name now, that is very popular in America, talking about vaccines, because they are sinister players in the power that's going to destroy all of us. And this is the time now coming for the judgment. And there is a certain man who is the leader in actually bringing everything in order finally, practically save us. This is one of my friends, I asked the question on Facebook about the spiritual connotation. And what do you as a follower of Jesus do with this? And he answers to me, praise the Lord, I have no problem with the conspiracy theories. I said to him back, you are a blessed man if this is the case. I go to his Facebook because I know him. And lo and behold, it's nothing else but a lineup of conspiracy theories. The problem is he doesn't see them as conspiracy theories. He sees them as the truth given by God. He says in his post, for me, Bible and the Q, these are the truth. He says there are 50 million of us now. So that's why I'm saying that most of the people who I know that are spreading at this moment conspiracy theories are Christians of some kind. There are people who also like to kind of be into apocalyptic things. And I don't want anyone to misunderstand me when I say apocalyptic things, that there is anything wrong with the book of Revelation, or there is anything wrong with even believing that we are living in the last days. But the problem is when you give it a certain spin, put some political blend into it together, and have some expectations about those, and then you start reading the things that are happening around you into those, you are very vulnerable. I'm not saying you who are following me today, you're very vulnerable to follow all kinds of ideas that are not proven, they're just being mass-produced, especially with the YouTube, and then believe them as the actual gospel, I would say it like this. Now, let me ask you a question. I can go on and about this, but I do want to hear our ladies here. Just to state, for example, to give you one illustration, that I'm not just talking about something that is like happening here in America or just within a narrow circle of people. Those things are global. They go around the world. I follow also my friends in Serbia and Croatia. Believe me, they are following all kinds of conspiracies. Many are of the same kind that are being followed in the country I'm living with. I can give you a very quick example of the ones that I know, for example, beginning with this country. Anti-vaxxing or vaccine, how you call it this. You shouldn't be vaccinated. Bill Gates, he's almost a demon. We shouldn't trust the World Health Organization. This is practically the demonic organization. Pandemic is a hoax. QAnon, I mentioned this. Soros, don't mention the name of Soros because he is the embodiment of evil. Now, if you go to Croatia, almost the same. All of this is hoax. 5G, all of the towers need to be burned down because they are the source of all our problems. Refugees are bringing Islam to Europe. That's a deliberate act, actually, to Islamize Europe. We don't want to allow this. If you go to Serbia, you have the same things. Soros, again, is to blame for everything. 5G, that's a very popular thing in Serbia, to be against 5G. If you go to Romania, whenever there is a criticism of the government, the opposition is blamed that they are in the hands of Soros. Also believe that this COVID, this pandemic is actually a scheme of the New World Order. If you go to Hungary, they have all kinds of, all of these kind of things going on about Hungarian territories that have been taken from them and need to be returned back from Romania to Serbia, Croatia. In Hungary also, Soros is the devil. We need to get rid of from Australia. Asians are taking our universities. If you are going to be vaccinated, if you're not going to be vaccinated, then you will not have the government benefits. For example, in China, that it was actually US military that has brought the virus to China. I'm just listing some of them. Just to give you an illustration, this is pretty much widespread. How to define what is a conspiracy theory or conspiracy narrative? Okay, to help me so that I don't go around, I put this on a paper. When we are talking about deliberate plotting with manipulative intentions designed to delegitimize and bring harm and spread fear and confusion by creating and spreading false, misleading, and discrediting accounts about people, organization, and events, then we have conspiracy theories going around. They are the bottom line. Often there is some truth in a conspiracy narrative, but there is always a twist. These are narratives that are dubious and questionable, designed to confuse, spread doubt in leaderships of the countries and so on, and to bring harm and to spread fear and uncertainty. Deliberate deception accepted by many as the truth. So these are some of those that I put on a paper about defining, those conspiracy theories. Now let me be clear about one thing, and then I'm going to the ladies. Do the conspiracies exist? Of course they do. I'm not naive. I'm not living in a bubble. One friend sent me yesterday a message, and he says, I can't really understand how is it that you don't believe that conspiracies exist. I don't have a time to argue with him. I just quickly responded to him and I said, I never said they do not exist. They do. They have existed from the fall of man, and they will exist up to the last day of this history. The history is full of conspiracies. This is true. When you, for example, if you believe in the Bible, when Satan comes to Eve in the Garden of Eden, this is a conspiracy. He mixes truth and lie. He mixes some truth and lie, and he creates a doubt. He projects God. He blames God for the things that he should not be blamed, so that Eve and Adam would not trust in him. When you talk about Jesus and his crucifixion, Jews do not know, the Jewish leaders, how to accuse Jesus. Then they come with a mixture of truth and lie to Pilate, and they present him as a threat to the government. That's a conspiracy. When you go to the Old Testament, to the book of Esther, this is a conspiracy. When you are going to the New Testament and you see Paul in Jerusalem and how he's being taken and attacked by his Jewish friends, that's a conspiracy. They want to even kill him, ambush him. There are conspiracies around. There are conspiracies today. There are cover-ups today. There is no question about this, that every day there are things happening that they should not happen. Unfortunately, there is a lot of evil going on around. There is lots of things happening that they should not be happening. But the point is, and at this point, my question goes to this: how do we distinguish between a true account of something and a conspiracy, which is a blend of truth and lie that has twists of some truth in it, and then attaches meanings and conclusions which are not true. I will stop here at this moment, and I will give it over to whoever wants to be the first, Julia or Heather, and to give us also some insight, your experience as journalist and politician. Who's going to be first?
Shall I go first? Because I think that's what we sort of agreed before, if that's okay with you.
All right. Okay.
Unless you want to jump in, Heather. Is that okay?
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, let me just set my clock because I am conscious of keeping to time if I can. Thank you very much, Tihomir. I think from what you've been saying, I have been spared a lot of the conspiracy theories that you've been receiving. However, I have received one or two of those. And actually, just before I came on the call, I also saw a post by the wife of an Anglican vicar, both of whom happen to be friends of mine. And she actually posted something about a book that she's just read about the Bill Gates and particularly his foundation. Well, as it happened, I was about to go onto a call with two quite senior people at Microsoft who both know Bill Gates personally. So I actually ran that by them and I said, I'm just going to read you what a friend of mine has just posted on Facebook. What are your responses? And two women, they immediately replied and said, like everything, and you put your finger on this, Tihomir, there is a little bit of truth in what you've just read, but it's all been completely exaggerated. And that made me think about the way that people write books. It's very easy to bring ingredients together and form a theory about how things happened or how things are or whatever. And that is what you do. If you think about it, if two of us are walking down the road and we see an accident, we will probably have different versions of that event. And in the same way that anything happens in the world, if I say, this is how it appeared to me, or say I have an argument with someone, I will give my version of the event, and then someone else will give their version of the event. And those two could be completely different mindsets about what actually happened. Now, I would think, or I would argue, that the impulse to try to discover what's really going on in the world is actually a very good impulse. We all want to know the truth. I believe that's part of God's image in us, that we respond to the truth, we want to be told the truth. But of course, we're also aware that many of the humans around us are fallen creatures. And so we want to be wise as well. We don't just want to believe the first thing that anyone tells us. So the result of that is that I think a lot of people, and I think conspiracy people are very much like this, it's like as you said, you quoted the Garden of Eden, it's people, they want to be God themselves. Remember, the serpent asked them to eat. And it was because you will then know everything that God knows. You will become like God. And I think this is a tendency in our world today. I think a lot of people want to sort of somehow show themselves as being the clever ones, as if the rest of us are too stupid to see it or to understand it or whatever, but they are the ones who have the real knowledge. Now, I would argue that with a lot of these theories, why do they not get to the mainstream media? And this is my background. It's because they go through layers of filtering, and they go through layers of people who've chosen to be experts in the field. And so, for instance, I was thinking it's a bit like an Olympic athlete. My uncle was an Egyptian basketball player in the Olympics many years ago. And you think of him and how he goes through layer after layer after layer of steps in which he becomes an elite athlete. He's chosen for the local squad of boys, then he goes to the regional squad, then he goes to the national squad, and then he goes to the Olympic squad. And it's the same way with a lot of, as we would call them, experts nowadays. They do their homework. they know the systems, they understand what's going on behind the scenes. So that's how journalism, say like the BBC, is actually made. You have people who've gone through layer after layer of really understanding the background, really knowing who the people are who are the, you know, the people who've got the background, who know the system, whatever. And so that's partly how what I would call some of these trusted guides, that's how they will only tell you what they have filtered. And a lot of it will be based on background, on experience, and they will really know, you know, I mean, for instance, I was just reading about the man who has been behind the mathematical modeling of our response to the pandemic, which was to have lockdown. You know, I read a very good article about, you know, people know that man, they know his work over 20, 30 years. They know, you know, what his track record is. So I think a lot of these things that you pick up on Facebook, on YouTube, you have no idea where they're coming from. And that's why as Christians, I don't think we should automatically put a follow or a share on anything until we've checked it out. And I'm going to give you a specific example from a couple of weeks ago. After the pandemic started, I had a post on WhatsApp from a very trusted friend, Christian friend of mine. I've been on holiday with her. And she posted a message and she said, "Isn't this wonderful?" And it was a story how an Italian doctor in Lombardy, at the center of the pandemic, this Italian doctor was an atheist. And because of the way that an Italian Catholic priest had been so loving and good with people dying of COVID in the hospital, the Italian doctor had come back to his faith, or come to a faith, after the Catholic priest had died of COVID. So basically the story was a wonderful apparent testimony of a Catholic priest and the way he was during the illness and afterwards he died. And that man, that Catholic priest, had prompted a doctor to come to his Christian faith. Now, I got this from a friend, so I thought, oh, what a wonderful story of Christian testimony. And I was just about to click like and share on Facebook when I thought, no, Julia, your policy is to check it out. So I thought, I'm just going to see where this post has actually started. You know, my lovely Christian friend has sent it to me. So I started what turned out to be 2 hours of tracing this post back on Facebook, just checking it back. You know, this person posted it, where did they get it from? You know, and I'm not an expert. I wasn't doing anything that you couldn't do. And it turned out that I tracked this post back. There was one little clue, by the way. The name of the Italian doctor was Iulian, I-U-L-I-A-N. Now, I happen to think that is not an Italian name. And of course, those of you who are Romanians will probably recognize it's actually the Romanian spelling of what we would have in English, Julian. So that was the first little clue. And of course, when I tracked this back, I tracked it back to essentially a Romanian guy living in France somewhere, according to his Facebook. And he was an actor. And it looked like, when I looked on his Facebook, there was nothing on his Facebook page that indicated any kind of Christian faith whatsoever. In fact, what it indicated from the other things he was posting was complete opposite of Christian faith. So I'm thinking, I don't think this is actually true, this story. So then I checked it out with some Italian colleagues in Italy. And I said, could you check this story for me? It's been on, you know, the Christian websites in Italy, Protestant and Catholic. And they came back to me very quickly and they said, no, we think this is a fake story. But they said, what's most disappointing is that a Protestant church leader in Italy had actually decided to print this story out, post it on the wall of the church notice board. And they said, well, it doesn't really matter if it's not a true story, because I'm sure there were 1 or 2 Italian doctors who became Christians as a result of the witness of a Catholic priest. And so for me, that was really shocking, because it was like the church leaders themselves are colluding in spreading fake news. So I'm going to stop it there, because I'm sure I've used up my 7 minutes, but that's just a few thoughts from a journalist. Over to you, Heather.
Great, thanks Julia and Tihomir. Yeah, just to reiterate, I think what both of you have said, in that conspiracy is difficult because the best ones always have a real mix of truth in that, and it's the same old adage that we have here that says, you know, the best lie is always the one that's quite close to the truth, because it's actually hard to unpick. And also what Tihomir pulled out there as well was really useful, that there are indeed some things that we would say, yes, there are conspiracies around, we need to get to the bottom of this. You know, if that wasn't the truth, I don't think we would have things like the intelligence services in our countries, for instance, or checking journalists or lawyers that specialize in some of this as well, around libel as well. So that makes it that much difficult, particularly in a political situation. The other thing I want to really bring out of this is what happens both on the receiving end as someone making policy, that it has to cope with conspiracies that are written to us on emails or letters, or even someone ringing up on the phone, or what happens from the reverse when governments use certain conspiracy theories or allow them to be have fuel on the fire, as it were, to sometimes create what's called a sort of smoke and mirrors effect. Whereby the pressure comes off the government because everyone else is focused on many other things that are happening around them. So first, on the kind of receiving end as making policy, it is incredibly frustrating when you are trying to make sound political decisions, often on a cross-party basis, whether that's in committees, and you're trying to do what's best for people. And I think right now about the pandemic, you're trying to keep people safe, you're looking for solutions that are not easy. And then you get Facebook posting, or people that sometimes should know better, creating fear amongst people in society, or saying, you know, for example, the ones we get a lot are, if you have a vaccine, then you're absolutely going to be filled with nanobots. Nanobots are going to tear you apart. Or, you know, the 5G one was very classic. And yet we all know there are issues with masks, or there are issues, particularly in Britain, with who is controlling that in terms of which government has the right to which network, for example. But the main thing of this is, why then are people going and tearing down all the masks and actually creating a massive issue for people that need internet access right now? So there are other layers to this. Or what happens when people don't believe that, for example, that COVID is correct, and then actually start going around hugging people. We had one instance of a family member of ours, that my dad's on here so he can verify this, went and decided to hug my 80-something-year-old grandma, because she didn't believe in coronavirus. She doesn't believe it's a problem, so she doesn't see a problem with her hugging our elderly relative. For me, that's a massive problem. What if then my grandmother gets sick as a result of my conspiracy believing cousin? This is a public health risk. It makes policy incredibly difficult when people don't take things like this seriously, or when there is other solutions that are being bandied around the press in this way. The other problem we have is you get endless letters, and just working in politics, you do not have the time. And I remember my boss saying to me, I'm always quite kind on the phone, so I tend to pick up the phone or I read the letter. And usually when I'm on the phone, I pick up the phone and I say, hello, so-and-so. Oh, really? That's your problem? Okay. And I kind of indulge them a little bit, and I try not to kind of agree with them, but usually I will say, absolutely, I hear what you're saying. How can we assist you? How can we help you? And before I know it, we're 30 minutes into a call where this, I had one quite recently where a person thought that the state was out to kill him, and he was quite deliberately saying that everything was a conspiracy, that some I think it was China he was referring to, were going to come and kill him, and he was really very, very disturbed. And my boss actually came, grabbed the phone off me, and basically put down the handset and said, ever as a politician, nobody should demand 30 minutes of your life. You've got more important things to be doing. A really very troubled person. If we can get the police to go around and help them, then we'll do that. But there's not much we can do. But conspiracy theories take your time. Tihomir has always alluded to that as well. You get sucked into people's lives, and you get sucked into things that, quite frankly, you can't deal with as a politician sometimes. There are policy areas I want to make better, child poverty, or refugee immigration, or whatever it is. Really, do I have the time to be worrying about who's an Illuminati or not? No, quite frankly, that's other people can worry about that. But it gets very, very difficult, because you also have the problem in politics of trying to work out what is actually something that I really need to deal with. Is there something I should be aware about? I'm in a very privileged position in my role, so I work for a very senior member of the British Parliament, who's a minister, And that means often I'll get to see papers on the select committees, particularly around what the police are doing, what the responses are, and also immigration policies, all these things that will come across my desk, and I get to assess them, and it's my job to ask questions, hold the government to account on it. The really frustrating thing for me is when someone comes with a conspiracy theory and they will say, you know, I know better, for instance. Or I'll say, no, but, you know, I have the documentation, I have the statistics, and they'll say, yes, but you only see what the government want you to see. I know better. And it's incredibly frustrating because I'm sitting there thinking, honestly, I've just read through 70 documents. Do you not think I have some understanding of this issue? So it gets really, really tricky. The other problem is, of course, that we get into factionalism. You know, conspiracy theories are all from the left, or conspiracy theories are all from the right of politics. And that's very difficult as well, because the truth is actually both the far left and the far right are guilty of conspiracy theories often, and they will put them out and it reflects certain bias that we have. But often what I found with conspiracy theories from all political sides is they have something in common, and that is usually that they find somebody to blame, that there is the other involved, and that person usually will have some kind of secret knowledge involved in there too. But there's a disturbing undercurrent that I've found for a lot of this, and I can speak as someone on the left, because we've had a real problem with this. But there is an anti-Semitic part to this, and it's often, particularly in Britain, when you mention George Soros, when you mention Rothschild, they have something in common, and that is they are Jewish. So a lot of these conspiracies get into very, very dangerous places where we start blaming people, and the people that you are blaming are Jewish. And that is particularly an old conspiracy. You know, we can go right back into British history about, you know, even I was thinking about this Shakespeare, when Shakespeare talks about Shylock, or, you know, the Jew, basically the hunchback Jew who takes the money and they've got the gold, or then we go to Hitler and the Nazis, you know, or even British treatment of people, these secret covert organizations or secret people that have had access to more than me. And therefore they create this conspiracy around this, which makes me incredibly, incredibly nervous. And particularly in politics, because if you start buying into that, you get on very, very slippery slope in terms of what you're saying, and you absolutely must weigh it and work through it and be very careful in your wording. So I'm not saying people like Soros and Bill Gates have absolutely everything right. From my personal dealings, because I do know Mr. Soros quite well, I would say his funding has been particularly useful and particularly great when it comes to certain policies on immigration, and is a very good charitable funder. Does that make him absolutely a saint? Probably not. No, none of us are saints. We all have, you know, mixture of a good and bad in us. So from a political standpoint, I'd say there is a danger, and it is an absolute minefield to work through, and it's incredibly, incredibly frustrating. And just very quickly before I kind of wrap up this tiny section, is around the smoke and mirrors. We would be, you know, I would be naive to say that our government or even my party has not used conspiracy theories at times to prop up certain policies or a certain way of projecting another country or projecting a group in a nation. You know, we've seen it so much with anti-immigration areas, or, you know, you could pick bankers, whatever it is you want to have a go at. But often conspiracy theories get used, or they get picked up on, or there's a kind of turning of the eye towards them because they're useful. That's what the press is talking about. Oh, if my social media is full on 5G conspiracy, or I don't know, something about the Rothschilds, or, you know, and it suits my political ideology, then why would I not let it go? You know, people are talking about that. They're not talking about my response to COVID-19. They're not talking about a death rate in the country. They're talking about a lab in China. You know, they're not talking about their neighbor needing care, for example. So, you know, they can be used politically. And again, I say that with, you know, very cautiously. Not every, but I'd say, you know, it can be used, is a difficult one. And my experience of the conspiracy is very much that I feel it's been personally damaging to me when I've been drawn into things, or people have continually called me up at sort of 2 a.m., 3 a.m., or to tell me their latest conspiracy. And that, I think, is something that really we need to be careful of. We need to be careful that we don't fall into that, and we need to be careful how we talk to people who make policy, whether that's a doctor, whether that's a politician. and making sure that we always check our facts, exactly as Julia has said. Thank you.
Okay, I just want to check whether you can hear me, because I lost internet at my home. And I'm now speaking using my iPhone, trying to restart a proper internet. Thank you very much, both of you. I mean, you have really added, I would say, the meat and the substance to my introduction. And I'm very much aware that this is such a theme that it's so easily time can take advantage of us. So I want to speed up a little bit, because I do want us to have some space also for people and questions. And I realize that there are some good questions coming. So let me just take a moment to get to the spiritual side, because most of us who are taking part in this Zoom conference, in this Zoom meeting, are followers of Jesus. We might be from different walks of Christian life and places, but we are followers of Jesus. And to me, it is a very important question: how do we as followers of Jesus relate to all of this, and where do we draw the line? I just want to, having listened to both of you, also to re-emphasize one thing, is that those conspiracies are not only the product of what we would like to call far right, or those who are on the right side of political spectrum, but you have it actually everywhere. The only thing is, at this moment, it seems to me that those who are being encouraged by some more far-right sides are being more prominent, about virus, about this being a hoax, about vaccine, about this QAnon theory, and so on. But that doesn't mean that only dwells on the right side of the political spectrum. They are all over the place. And one more thing that I would like to also emphasize is this. I've been trying to analyze myself, and we are all prone to believe some conspiracies. The only thing is that sometimes that when we do believe them, we don't think they are conspiracies. We think they are the truth, and only what is on the other side is the lie. I'm mostly concerned about those, what I would call obnoxious conspiracy theories, that really, in my judgment, have nothing to do with sanity. I mean, drinking a bleach to heal yourself from corona is one of them, to give you an example. Just kind of a mild example. There are more than this. So what us as a follower of Jesus, I think that any area where we are kind of detecting that listen, there is something suspicion, has to put a question mark on how we deal with this, not to be rushing and immediately copying the links and spreading and sharing to others. I have just a few points here that I would just quickly share, because I would really like to hear also Julia and Heather talking on this spiritual side. Thank you, Julia. You have already introduced us actually to this. So in my view, spreading, it's like spreading a false witness. When things, I don't care whether something has some truth in it, but if it's a blend of truth and lie, if there is a serious twist, some truth being actually twisted in a way that the results are lying, it's actually, if we are part of spreading those conspiracy theories, we are actually partaking in being a false witness. And definitely, if we are partaking in spreading rumors, we are partaking in spreading of confusion. We are like this person who is crying wolf, in a village. Every day goes and cries, wolf, 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 wolf. And at the end of the day, you really don't know whether the wolf is coming or not. So that one day when the wolf is really come, no one is taking it seriously anymore. Also, I think it's idolatry. It's idol worship. It's actually a sort of a pagan form of syncretism, a false Gnostic gospel, I would like to say, believing that I'm in a possession of some secret knowledge that's only given to those who are discerning. And the rest of us, we are just sheep, who are blind, you don't see. I have a friend who was constantly sending messages, say, Tihomir, wake up, wake up, wake up. The other thing is that, that as a Christian and one who firmly believes in Jesus, I think when we are, and when I say we, I don't mean we who are now listening, and generally speaking, when we are contributing to spreading of the conspiracy narratives, we are actually attributing Satan with more power than God himself. We are actually telling the others that at this moment Satan is more powerful because there is nothing to be trusted, nothing to believe. You can't believe CNN, you can't believe any newspaper. You can only believe YouTube, and you can only believe some questionable sources, but you basically can't believe anything. To me, this means also like Christ has been defeated. We have been defeated. He's having an upper hand, and I firmly do not believe in that. And I also believe that spreading those alarming conspiracies is actually discrediting Christ and Christian faith. I mean, we are actually creating a circus of our faith. And I'm not surprised that so many people are against us. I am reminded of the scripture that says it is because of you, and again, not you, but people, Christians, followers of Jesus, who are so much steeped into conspiracy theories. It's because of you, the name of God is being blasphemed among the unbelievers. We are like a laughing stock. They're saying, is this your Christianity? Is this what you believe? So these are some of my thoughts. I would like to hear Julia and Heather. It doesn't really matter who is first. I just wanted to do it maybe as quickly as possible because I want to hear you two. And I would like also to have some space for some questions because there are some good questions coming. So who's going to do it?
Sorry, I was just trying to unmute. So if I jump in, I'm as I said on my little bio, if you saw it on the invitation that Boyan and Rachel sent round, the reason I sort of listed the number of wars that I've been involved in reporting over the last N years is because, as I said on that, in a war, truth is the first casualty. Now, the thing with us as Christians is we pride ourselves on trying to interpret the more difficult parts of the Bible, particularly the, as you talked about, I've just lost the term, interpreting the book of Revelation, eschatology, that's the word. And my grandmother, who died many, many years ago now, she was convinced that Henry Kissinger was the Antichrist. She was also convinced that the beast with 10 horns in the book of Daniel was the common market, which at that time had 10 countries. The only problem is that the European Union now has, 26, 27 countries. So as soon as things change, what Christians believed was the truth is proved to be not true. And remember, Jesus said, he didn't want us to spend all our time trying to work out the signs and the symbols. He said, no man knows the day or the hour on which the Son of Man will come again. So he's kind of, he wants us to be focused on how we are living day to day. Are we demonstrating Christ in our lives in the way that we're looking after our neighbor, that we're being loving and kind and whatever, rather than spending our days poring over sort of eschatology and possible theories about, this or that being the last days. I mean, I've heard people say that, is this the beginning of the tribulation? Or is this, as you mentioned, the chip and 666 and all of that. The other thing I think with all of the way that some of this is communicated is the way that it is being written about or talked about, is that actually done in the way that Christ would do it, or indeed does it display the characteristics of God? Is the way someone's writing, is it angry, bitter, jealous, destructive, whatever, or is it actually written for people, for people's good? Now, of course, people, when they post something, they think that they're being very helpful to everyone, sending on this thing. But frankly, when I read my friend's post on Facebook an hour ago, what struck me was that she was very, very well intentioned by sharing this revelatory knowledge that she's just had about how terrible Bill Gates is. But it didn't strike me in that that Bible verse, whatsoever is good, whatsoever is pure, whatsoever is of good repute, think on these things. It came across as actually quite judgmental, quite critical, quite negative. And And yes, as Heather said, you know, nobody is all saint or all sinner. And as we said at the beginning, you know, all of these conspiracy theories probably have a grain of truth in them. And as I said, the seeking after truth is a very noble Christian endeavor. It's just, are we doing it in a spirit of truth and a spirit of love? Or are we doing it in a spirit of, look at me, look how clever I am, and what amazing, you know, secrets of the world I'm about to share with you? Is it done in a sort of look at me way? How you know, I've found out something that the rest of you don't know. I loved, Alan, the comment you made about, is it a desperate search for sort of desperately showing your identity and seeking, you know, your identity as one of those kind of amazingly gifted, enlightened few that see the secrets of the world in a way that no one else does. So I think there definitely is something of that. It's about, you know, look at me, I'm so clever, I know the right people to read and the right places to go. So I think that's where I'd leave it. Is it being done in the Spirit, in the Holy Spirit, a spirit of truth, a spirit of love, a spirit of gentleness, of self-control, or is it done in a sort of ranty, you know, trying to score points kind of way? Over to you, Heather, sorry.
Sorry. Yeah, I think I would just echo absolutely everything that Julia and Tihomir have been said. And just to kind of add to you a bit, Julia, there, I think, you know, what fruit is it producing is exactly the question that we have to be asking in this as well. Is it, you know, is it a fruit of peace? Is it a fruit of joy? Is it actually, you know, when I hear this or when someone's sharing it with me, is it making a kind of real unease inside me, or this kind of pit of anxiousness? You know, is the fruit I'm experiencing from reading this or talking to this person, is it actually unsettling my peace or my feeling with God in that sense? Is usually a test I'd have. And that's not to say that we shouldn't feel uncomfortable. In fact, I think our faith calls us to be uncomfortable at times. And it also calls us to hold to account. So we do want to be, you know, checking on what's going on. We do want to be looking into sometimes quite dark places. In fact, some people have a special gifting at this, I'd say, and I'd say Julia is one of them, being a journalist. But I think people that have a gifting to go and research, to look and to bring light. And actually, as Christians, we are called to bring light into the darkness. But the fruit of that also has to be not this terror, not this special knowledge or I know more than you. And I think that's where you are exactly right in that. And the other thing, of course, the Bible always talks about is, one, do not be wise in your own eyes. And two, we're called to be wise as a serpent, it says, isn't it? And as innocent as a dove. So we should be wise. We should be able to test. But equally, we're to carry this spirit of innocence about us. You know, we're not to cause malice. We're not to start just throwing things out there for the sake of throwing things out there. You know, actually, what is it we're doing it for, and who is it doing it for? And I think the questions that people have been asking, and exactly again what Tihomir and Julia raised, is it replacing God? You know, is this conspiracy theory an idol that we're making? Are we making an idol out of something, or an idol out of an image within that? You know, who is it pointing to? And often when, for example, I think thinking back to some church leaders that might have shared some conspiracy theories, it has not really pointed to Jesus. Let's say it that way. It's often pointed to them. It's pointed to an organization. It's pointed to give us some money and we're going to tell you some extra bits of secret knowledge, for example. Where is Jesus in there? He has got lost. And I think his title was brilliant in this. You know, he's got lost in the jungle, in a sense that Jesus has become small in conspiracy, when actually Jesus should be massive and should be large above it. He should be our ultimate, and actually that's where we should be looking at each and every one of these areas and saying, where can we speak truth into this? And you know, where am I getting my peace from right now in this?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'm just wondering, our host Rachel, how much time can we afford for some questions, because I realize there are some very good questions coming. Wow. And while you are talking, you know, luckily it happened while you are talking, I lost the internet at home, which very seldom happens. And now if I'm into conspiracy, luckily, praise the Lord, I had 2 gadgets, so I immediately switched on to my iPhone. But if I'm into conspiracy, I would think, my goodness, what sinister powers have done it to me right now at this time. It never happens, very seldom. Okay. So let's have some time for questions and discussion, because I think it is an important.
We must have 5G.
What? Important.
Scott is joking. He said he must have 5G at home.
Yeah, not yet. But when it does come, I will get it, for sure. Okay. All right.
Just to prove them all wrong.
All right. So how do you go about questions, Rachel?
Yes. I'll start with one for Julia from Bo about media. He asked.
Yeah, I've got it. I've read it. Yeah.
Okay.
About comparing CNN and Fox.
Or just two different news sources giving very different accounts of the same story.
Yeah.
How do you determine which one to?
Well, that's a very interesting question, Bo, and hi. I think the thing that you need to understand with particularly what you might call mass broadcast media is a little bit about their background, their funding. Of course, that can change over time, but essentially we know that Fox and CNN are coming from very different sort of political perspectives, and so I would, and of course she says here, putting in a little word for something like the BBC, there is a world of difference between what I call public service media, which is genuinely trying to, the first aim is to, in the words of the BBC, educate, inform and entertain. It's not to make money, whereas you have commercial television channels, and essentially at the end of the day it's about how many viewers do we have to pay the advertisers to get more money, to build more programs, to get more viewers, to pay more, to pay more money from the advertisers. So you've got to look at the funding model and understand a little bit about the sort of the history and the background, why they started, and then you can take into account. Now obviously nowadays broadly, Fox, we know, is right-wing, broadly Republican, broadly supportive of Trump, and CNN is the opposite. So you could say, well, one good way is to actually look at both of them, and probably the truth is somewhere right down the middle between the one and the other. Alternatively, try and listen to the BBC or another public service broadcaster, because that is a different model. But I agree, it can be difficult. More and more these days, global media are in the hands of, powerful multinational companies. And if you're in an African country, as you will know, Bo, a lot of the times, the mainstream media, the big media, are in the hands of a politician, as in the case in Nigeria, or a businessman in say, a country like Sudan or other countries. And so you need to sort of really, do your homework and have a bit of background, and then be discerning. And the other thing I would also say on that, just very quickly, I won't go into it in great depth, is look at the language that they use. Are they using what I would call inflammatory or emotional language? The sort of, one of the rules I have very, very quickly with my journalists is you don't need to tell me a murder is horrific. A murder by its very nature is horrific. You don't need to say this horrific murder. So it's that kind of thing. Are they trying to play with your the way that they report? So that's just a very quick, hope that helps.
Thank you, Julia. That's fantastic. I have a question for Heather. Because you've had that Disagree Well campaign in the UK, how can we disagree well with people who believe the opposite of what we do? Because the phenomenon that I've observed is that both sides kind of think the other side is completely blind and like stupid and misled. So how can we deal with the other side when we have so little common ground?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it can be a hard one at times, especially when you start getting a bit worked up about something, or when you're particularly passionate about your point of view, or especially if it affects you. I think the first thing I'd say is, can you articulate the other person's position? Do you actually really understand what they think? That's always really helpful. So doing some background research into that, actually not going to your usual sources of media, a bit like Julia has said, actually really helps as well, because you will get a particular view depending on what country you're in, depending on what paper you're reading, depending on what thing you're reading about. that person's point of view or that person's politics, for example. In UK, I just go straight to the other person's manifesto and actually have a read of that, rather than filtering it through the news or whatever. Or I might just ask that person, what do you actually believe about this? That really helps. And if I can articulate the fact, then I think we can have a good discussion. The other thing that really helps in that is bringing some of the emotion out of it. Emotion is good because it means you care, but emotion can also tip you over the edge. Not taking it personally is always the way my boss describes it to me. That is harder than you think it is at times, especially if the attack is aimed particularly at you. That can be difficult. But trying not to, if somebody disagrees with me on a policy, I try not to take that personally. I actually remember being asked, I was in Montenegro doing something, and they asked me at a session, they said, what do you think about Donald Trump? And, one of those traps that I thought, oh no, I'm going to walk right for it. So I just tried to depersonalize it. And I said, well, I don't know him personally. My view of Donald comes from what I get in the press and everything else. But I can talk you through his policies and why I disagree with this, from my standpoint. And so that's what I'd say. Take the sting out of it, take the emotion out of it, because often people want to rise. They want you to get emotional. They want you to get angry. For you women out there, this is my top tip as well. People love it when women get passionate or angry, because we're never described as being passionate in an argument or assertive. We're described as being a bully. We're described as being loud. We're described as being overly emotional. So I would say, particularly as a woman, just try to be extremely calm when you're having an argument, even when it's really hard. Don't hold back. But it's more difficult actually as a woman, I think, at times, to get your particular disagreement across. But I hope that really helps. But I would particularly say, listen to what someone's saying, articulate their policy, and try not to get too emotional when you get into that argument.
Thank you. I think those are really fantastic tips in much wider situations, not just conspiracy theory discussions. I think for Tihomir, we have two questions, both related to Christian leaders. So Jack asked, so do leaders in the spiritual space have extra potency to spread conspiracy theories? And then Alan added, there's a long history of church leaders spreading or encouraging disinformation and rumor against other faith groups or denominations in order to build up their own power base. Is the subject today a variant of this? So Tihomir, if you want to address those two questions.
Yeah, I think that the theme about conspiracy narratives and fake news and actually bad-mouthing others with the things that are not true or are half-truths, I think we as Christian leaders have been guilty of that many times. And believe me that I have been lately thinking about this a lot. I've been thinking a lot about this, reflecting on some of my earlier years in a ministry when I was minister and so on. And I'm seeing that I'm seeing things very much differently now than say 20, 30 years ago. And then I was saying things then being fully convinced that these were truthful statements, but probably today from pulpit I would never say them again, because I would think twice if it's all right to say. And especially in those areas about addressing other leaders, other church denominations, other faiths, addressing them and labeling them. I grew up in an environment when I was younger in a church, which has many good things, that actually had, and it's not the only one, I mean, there are many like this even today. This complex we and only we, only us, everything else is Babylon, everything else is outside of the God's plan. And when you grow up in that environment, you develop this attitude of actually undermining others and lifting up yourself, your work, your denomination. So I don't know if this is answer to this question, but there are several levels at which we have been guilty of this, to whatever degree we have been. It saddens me today when I hear some of the ministers and pastors of different churches, denominations are still doing this in a harmful way towards the others. And I don't know whether I should be giving examples or not, but it's going a lot. So yes, we are not immune to spreading false information, false rumors, and also partake, let's call it conspiracy narratives. If we don't think about this, we certainly are doing it without even knowing. I don't know if this is the answer to the question, those two questions.
It's the beginning. Yeah,
Can I just jump in quickly? Just on that, I think we all know that religious leaders have a tremendous following, who you know, whether they're Christian, Muslim, whatever. And I honestly think that the mainstream, you know, if you like, the wider world, that's a lot of the reason why they're often very negative or very cynical or very skeptical about faith, religion, because they've seen the abuse of power that religious leaders you know, undertake. And we, you know, there's no shortage in the world today, you know, mega pastors, etc., etc. And I think that is the danger. You know, at the end of the day, there are three things that, you know, trip us all up, or can potentially trip us all up. And I think money, I was going to say money, sex, and power. And the trouble is with the church leaders, they're not immune from any of those. But of course, they have maybe hundreds of people who believe that they are somehow, you know, above reproach. And so I think that's just, we often put our religious leaders kind of on a pedestal as well. And sometimes they put themselves on it, but I think they have a particular responsibility because of that.
And Julia, if I can add, when you were talking about this story, beautiful story about this priest, you know, that would kind of break your heart, you know. I've been thinking about, when my also pastoral when I was younger, and I've been thinking this about many times, and it kind of borderlines with what we are doing now, but it is there. Many pastors, and it's like broadcasters and whatever, when you are carried away, when you are preaching your sermon, you can easily start exaggerating. Just to make the point. You might be making a truthful point, but you're using a false story to make it. And I was guilty of this too as a young minister. When I look back, I was sharing some stories that, when I really think 3 times now, were not true, but they were there breaking the hearts of the people. And I didn't think twice about this because the intention was right, you know, in the Lord's eyes, that I thought, you know, it's just to bring people to the Lord, you know. But the means were not always good. So yes, we and especially those, the more popular you are, I'm not a popular pastor or anything, but the more popular you are, the more tendency there is to exaggerate. And therefore get into area where you don't speak truth.
Yeah. That's a really interesting point that could lead to a whole other discussion. Mikhailo has a really good question. I think maybe it's Julia's sphere or Heather's. You guys can decide who will answer it. He says, we see that Facebook and YouTube are banning materials related to conspiracy theories, but this is actually serves to make the people who believe these stories even more convinced that they're true because they're being persecuted for telling the truth. Is there a better approach to dealing with conspiracy theories than banning them?
Do you want to have a go, Heather, or do you want me to have a go? Yeah? Okay. So you're right. Of course, anyone, I mean, just disregard conspiracy theories. Just as a reporter, in my experience, there are always people who will tell you, you know, I am not being taken seriously. My views, my part of the community is not being heard, etc., etc. So there's always that. When you overlay, well, of course, you know, they're shutting me down because I have the truth, then it becomes much worse. I think the really difficult thing is that and this is something I know is subject right now of ongoing discussions with the tech giants like Facebook, Google, Microsoft, whatever, about fake news, fake information spreading around. The dangerous thing is if you leave it on there, then it is infinitely more risky or dangerous to greater numbers of people. So I think the answer is that they should be removing it. But of course, as you said, then that produces the persecution complex. I think it's I think it's a lot, the main thing I would say, it's a lot about educating the public to have what I would call media literacy, that they understand how these, how viral disinformation spreads, all that kind of thing. So they understand that it's not, it's partly because they themselves, the person who's posting it, has not verified it or has not, done their due diligence or whatever. But I think you're right. I think it does need a lot of painstaking work, really, rather than just banning them. People should be able to engage in a dialogue. The difficult part is that's pretty well impossible with thousands and thousands of people, I guess.
Yeah, just on that quickly, Julia, I think from a policy perspective, it is quite tricky to get the balance right. I think you all know the problem we have with kind of what is freedom of speech and what is incitement to hate, what is going to cause a problem, what is deliberate misinformation. It is quite a murky world. And I'd say one of the issues we have is that as the internet has progressed, and you have things like Twitter and TikTok now and everything else on Facebook, the internet law has not caught up. So international law around this is pretty behind. So it's always having to catch up on what is right, what is not. So exactly what Julia is saying, you're reliant on the tech giants to do a lot of this, rather than say individual governments or the UN legislating on these areas. And that legislation is always too far behind. And then you get into lawsuits of, you're denying my right to say what I wanted to say, you're denying my right to share this particular piece of information, which will always go down to a court as it's in the public interest. They'll say, I was sharing this because it was in the public's vested interest to know this particular conspiracy or particular issue about the British government or about the Chinese government or about a particular tech firm or a church or whatever it happens to be. So the line in politics on it has always been, where is the line? So is it incitement? Is it causing hatred? Is it racist? Is it doing harm in these sense? And you always get pushback on those areas. Exactly, again, what Julie was saying, if you shut it down, do you add more fuel to the fire? Do you create martyrs? Does it go underground into the dark web where you can't trace it, you can't source it, and it becomes very difficult to keep and monitor these? Do you allow it on mass media, in which case Julia's right, you create more storm, it spreads very quickly, but at least you can monitor it. And so there's always this kind of issue about it. We have a particular issue with a person in the UK who is part of a kind of far right hate group, I would call it that, a nationalistic group, that was on a lot of media and was eventually taken down. He was taken down off Facebook, and then he opened another Facebook, and we had to take that down, and it was opened on TikTok, and goodness knows how many things were brought up. And actually the reason behind his messaging being taken down was it was deemed to be A, not in the public interest, and B, it was deemed to be hate speech, it was racist, it was anti-Semitic at times. And that was the reasoning behind it. But in doing that, what's happened is you created some kind of mythological figure, this great figure that's fighting on behalf of a certain section of British society. And that's really tricky because it's endless court battles then. And that is, from a political standpoint, I'd say that's why perhaps we are not as good as we should be at monitoring Facebook or monitoring Twitter. And that's also down to the fact that national governments actually don't have a huge amount of power when it comes to dealing with people like Facebook. In Britain, we've tried to get the owners of Facebook to come before select committees and failed quite often. And the same with Google. Every platform, Twitter has been a little bit better, but it's been a massive fight with them. And it's just been an ongoing battle. So it's going to require a lot of wisdom. It's going to require a lot of time. I realise, Mihailo, it's not a particularly great answer to your question. So I'm going to challenge you, Mihailo, since you're in business and things like this, to come up with something. Or anyone that kind of has a legal background or a journalistic background to think how we might do this better, because we do need to clamp down on this. And as Julia said, we absolutely need to train people to become media literate as well.
Thank you so much, Heather. I think before we wrap up, I just want to give Martha the opportunity if she wants to make a comment, because I liked her comment in the comment box and it's not really a question, about labeling. Do you want to say something, Martha?
Sure. I mean, I guess maybe because I live in an entire household of conspiracy theorists, people that don't go ahead and follow mainstream, people who think outside the box, people who challenge other thoughts, look at different materials, and go ahead and form their own opinions, which I hear from this group of, the main speakers, that if you don't agree with mainstream, if you don't go ahead and follow what you're hearing in the news, you can be banned from Facebook, and that's okay. You want to monitor what we would call freedom of speech. And I'm not talking about in a hateful way, that type of thing, but it's just fascinating to me that if you disagreed with immunizations or disagreed how COVID-19 is being, being presented or being, just how it's being handled, then you've got the problem. And I just think this is interesting too because of the group that we're in at ROM, where we go ahead and step back and talk to people and listen to different opinions and be able to have that dialogue, to listen to people that have that are different than you. So I have a tough time calling people conspiracists, having conspiracy theories, and so that's where I am. So thanks for listening.
Thank you, Martha. That's really challenging and good for us to think about. Okay, I think that the plan at the end, Tihomir, is for each of you to have 2 more minutes, and then we finish up. So if you want to have the last 2 minutes, go ahead.
Okay, I would like to go in different order so that the ladies have first and I'm then the last. Is this all right?
Yeah, I think what I would just like to say, just wrapping up, I don't have a great deal, but my last thought is I want to reiterate a little bit from what Martha's just saying. As I said at the beginning, I do think a desire to seek out the truth is a good thing. It's when it becomes, I mean, in our terms as Christians, when it becomes the idol. I think you mentioned the word idol, Tihomir. Often we're challenged as Christians, aren't you? Where do your real sort of, who are your idols? What are your idols? Those are the things that you spend most time and energy and thought on. And if you find yourself as a Christian, spending hours every day, reading and thinking about conspiracy theories, then I would argue that has the potential to be one of your idols, just the same way as, if it was something else. So, as I said, I'm not knocking, and as Heather mentioned, freedom of speech, freedom of expression, I may not agree with what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it, as long as it does not incite to hatred, incite to violence, whatever. I think particularly around the area of harm, that's a very tricky one, because what causes harm? How do you define harm? Someone can say this has harmed me, but other people would say that's not a problem. So I think particularly that the word harm can often be a difficult one for the lawyers. But I think, as I said, the instinct for truth is a good one, and the instinct for wanting to know the truth. I mean, Jesus said, know the truth will set you free. It's when it becomes out of balance and out of kilter that I have a problem with it.
Yeah, I would absolutely echo just what Julia has said there. I think holding good accountability is absolutely vital. Absolutely we are called to find the truth, and we're called to do that wisely, and to dig into what is right and what is noble, and absolutely, what is good in a sense. Just on the point of kind of, I actually love what Martha's saying, and I think none of us, well, I don't see myself as someone that's mainly mainstream in my media or what I watch just because of my job, but I'd say there is a creativity as well in all of us that strives to find something different, that wants to see what is right, and to be looking at different ideas. And that's the beauty, and exactly what Martha's saying, that's the beauty of ROM. Actually here, what we're doing is having a great discussion about these areas. And, I'm blessed with a family that has multiple views on multiple things. Some of them are rather more vocal than others, shall we say, about how they view people. But what that's taught me is an ability to try and hear, and that's the key thing, hear what they're saying. what is it they're concerned about? What is it, you know, we're all frightened of? And particularly in COVID-19, I think that's almost why we see a lot of strange conspiracies going out as well. It's because we all want to see, what is it that's causing this? You know, what is it that is keeping me in the home? Why can't I go and hug my grandma? You know, these are all valid questions, and we're all called to look into that. And actually, we're all called to find what's factual and what's not. And as I referred to earlier, you know, it's why governments have intelligence services. It's exactly the same thing. They're there to find the truth. Whether we like the truth or not is another aspect of that. You know, we have whole government departments here in the UK, and whole mountains of civil servants whose job is to find that and to look through these things. And that's a good thing. That's the right thing to do. But as Julia was saying, you know, when it becomes an idol, when it becomes dangerous, when it actually takes up so much of my space or your space, then that's really tricky. When I spend all my time in Revelation or wherever else, it's out of balance with the cross. It's out of balance with my centrality of Jesus. That's difficult. And that's where I think we lose our center point, and we lose our ability to talk well to each other. Just very quickly, I think Tihomir might put this out as well. I don't like calling people conspiracy theorists in a sense, but there are professional conspiracy theorists, and we get them in Parliament. They're paid, so you know, some people actually have it in their Twitter bio, conspiracy theorists, and that's not you, Martha. But what I'm saying is there are people that get a lot of money for this, and they spend, you know, often days texting me or phoning me at work to tell me they're upset. That's not really what we're referring to here. These people make a living out of it. They, you know, maybe they fuel a lot of the fake media. I think what we as Rom are particularly cautious of is saying, you know, where are we looking for our truth, and how are we talking to each other about it? I think that's the main thing. So yeah, I'm going to finish there and hand over to Tihomir.
And Julia and Heather, you have really kind of wrapped it well and put the place where the focus needs to be. Because for me, as a follower of Jesus, I don't want anything as much as possible to take away from the weight and importance of Jesus, or put it next to Jesus, and then to start having parallel revelations that are being blended together into the truth. Am I guilty of this? Probably unconsciously, yes. And I'm fighting with my own little demons about this. But the reason I wanted us to talk about this was this, because from what I'm seeing is those conspiracy theories, which, for the lack of a better word, I really don't know. I don't like the expression. I'm trying to use also the expression conspiracy narratives, you know, because no one has come with anything better with this. So we are playing with the conspiracy rumors. We're playing with those expressions. I've been using those kind of expressions. They have really mushroomed. They have always existed. And most of those conspiracy theories that are very popular today are actually recycled. They are not new. They've been around 5-10 years ago. They're just receiving a new spin. COVID-19 is being injected into it, and then you're getting a new flavor, new kind of fire going around this. I'm concerned when followers of Jesus are becoming the instruments of spreading those. I'm concerned. I'm concerned because to me this is like adding agnosticism, like in the first century, you know, when false teachers were coming and they were behaving as they have a kind of special knowledge given to them, you know, and if you don't see it, you're an idiot, you know. And if you really want to be a truthful follower of Jesus, you will see the truth of them, you know. And you'll be one of us, as a friend of mine is constantly saying, open your eyes, wake up, my friend, wake up, my friend. And he wants me to believe in the Q theory. Because I watched 2 or 3 videos, Q videos. I'm horrified where they are leading it. And I'm telling you responsibly, some people given a chance would kill in the name of this theory. Would kill. If you want to waste your time, videos are going around, watch some of those that are talking and explaining what the Q theory is all about, QAnon. Some people would kill about this. I'm not surprised that in Michigan, demonstrators are coming with guns onto the street and shouting, tyranny, 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 tyranny. They are all followers, most of them of the Q theory. Sorry that I have to say this. I am concerned when I see this, and I'm asking myself, where is this leading to? And I do think it's a legitimate thing also in the Rome community to talk about this, because I see people in Serbia and Croatia following exactly the same theories, being excited about this, debating in Croatia and Serbia about them. There is one populist politician in Croatia that I asked one question on Facebook and I had 200 comments about him, you know, who is into conspiracies up to here. I'm concerned. There is a difference, in my view, whether one believes in the flat earth theory. I mean, I can laugh. You know, I can laugh at them, but it doesn't bother me. They can believe as many of them. But there is a difference when someone believes in the theories like this, Q theory. Or if one is saying, you know, if you're going to be vaccinated against COVID, we are almost to have a revolution about this because it has a chip. It's a means of enslavement. I'm not naive, and I'm finished with this. I'm not naive. You know, there is enough evil in the world, and there are people who are conspiring. There are leaders who are conspiring. There are people who would like to take us into dictatorship and use this situation to lead us there. But we are not talking today about this. We are not talking about those information and news which are clearly in media, and we know it's happening. We know that Orban in Hungary has taken the advantage of the situation, of this situation, corona situation, to impose himself and disband the parliament. We know this. This is not a conspiracy. That's clearly in the open. So there is difference between the factual things that point to evil to make us concerned, and there is enough to talk about this and raise our voices. But when you have a bunch of all kinds of theories that are blaming, labeling all kinds of people, equaling them with demons and satans and this, and the sooner we get rid of them, the world is going to be a happier place, then it concerns me. It concerns me. So I believe we are still friends, my friends. We have known each other in Rome for many years. And you know that sometimes when I speak, I cross the line because I do want to kind of intimidate a little bit just to make us think. On my end, I want to say thank you for coming and having this, I think, a very good time of discussion. And your questions are actually pointing that there was a point and reason. I'm just sorry that I was not given opportunity, but that's another time about David Koresh and Branch Davidians. I saw a question there, but that's for another time. Okay, thank you. Back to you, Rachel.